The day my parents showed up at my mansion after 21 years of silence, I felt nothing but ice in my veins. Standing in my doorway with fake smiles, they acted like they hadn't called me a curse and thrown me out with nothing but a backpack at 16. Now they needed money for medical bills. The same people who missed every birthday, every Christmas, who never even called to see if I was alive or dead. I looked them straight in the eyes and said the words I had rehearsed for years. We're not family anymore. I grew up in a small house on the outskirts of Meadowbrook, Pennsylvania, where the winters were harsh and opportunities were scarce. My father, Tom, worked at the local manufacturing plant, his employment always hanging by a thread with every economic downturn. My mother, Diane, picked up shifts at the highway diner, coming home with sore feet and the permanent smell of grease in her hair. Money was always tight, but there were moments of genuine happiness in those early years. I remember sitting on my dad's shoulders at the county fair when I was 6, feeling like I could touch the clouds. Mom would sometimes surprise me with a new sketchbook when I filled one with drawings, even though I knew those $5 could have gone toward bills. "My little artist," she'd say, ruffling my hair with something like pride in her eyes. School came easily to me. By 3rd grade, teachers were sending notes home about my exceptional aptitude and gifted abilities. Mom would tape these to the refrigerator, but I noticed how Dad's smile tightened whenever someone mentioned my intelligence. "Book smarts don't pay bills," he'd mutter, though not directly to me. Not yet. When I was 8, my brother Jake was born. The day they brought him home, wrapped in a blue hospital blanket, I presented them with a drawing I'd spent hours perfecting. Our family, now 4, instead of 3, standing in front of our house with a big yellow sun overhead. Mom glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Camden. But can you be quiet now? The baby's trying to sleep." That was the last drawing that made it to our refrigerator. As Jake grew older, the shift in our family dynamic became impossible to ignore. Where my academic achievements were met with shrugs and comments about being stuck up, Jake's average report cards were celebrated. When he made the Little League team, Dad never missed a game, even taking time off work. My art competition on the same day? "You'll be fine on your own, Camden. You're so independent anyway." By 13, I understood my place in the family hierarchy. I was the responsible one, the one expected to babysit Jake for free, to help Mom with chores without being asked, to never cause trouble or require attention. Meanwhile, Jake could do no wrong, even when he broke my art supplies by accident or told lies that got me grounded. The real trouble started when I was 15. Our family's financial situation worsened after the plant laid off 100 workers, my father included. The atmosphere at home became suffocating, with Mom and Dad fighting late into the night. I overheard them once, Mom's voice sharp with accusation. "If you hadn't bought that stupid fishing boat, we can't even afford to put gas in." The strange part was how they began to talk about luck and fortune, as if they were tangible things you could control. Dad especially became obsessed with the idea that certain people were cursed and brought bad luck to everyone around them. "Some folks are just born under a bad sign," he'd say, his eyes sliding toward me when he thought I wasn't looking. One afternoon, I came home early from school with a migraine. The house was supposed to be empty, but as I approached my bedroom, I heard rustling inside. I pushed open the door to find my mother hurriedly closing my desk drawer, my private journal in her hand. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't you take that tone with me," she snapped, not even attempting to hide what she'd been doing. "As long as you live under our roof, nothing here is private." That night at dinner, Dad made a pointed comment about my friend Taylor, whom I'd only mentioned in my journal, describing my conflicted feelings about her recent behavior. The violation made me physically ill, but what was worse was realizing this wasn't the first time. All those moments when they'd known exactly which buttons to push, exactly which insecurities to target, they'd been reading my most private thoughts for years. I began keeping my real journal at school, in my locker, writing false entries in the one at home. The next time Mom made a comment based on my fake entry about a teacher I'd pretended to have a conflict with, I knew my suspicions were confirmed. They weren't just invading my privacy, they were using my personal thoughts as ammunition. That was the beginning of understanding that in my own home, I wasn't safe. Not physically, perhaps, but emotionally? I was under constant attack, and somewhere deep inside, A voice I'd never heard before whispered that someday I would need to escape. By 16, I had adapted to my reality. I maintained straight, as while working 20 hours a week at the local grocery store, saving every dollar I could in a lockbox hidden under a loose floorboard in my closet. My manager at the store, a gruff but fair woman named Martha, had increased my hours when she saw how reliably I worked. "Never seen a kid your age so determined," she said once, and I took it as the highest compliment. At home, things deteriorated rapidly after Dad's unemployment benefits ran out. He picked up occasional handyman jobs, but spent more time at the local bar than looking for steady work. Mom's hours at the diner barely covered our utilities. The arguments grew louder, more vicious, and increasingly focused on what a burden I was. How much I ate. How my art supplies were a waste of money. How my attitude was making everyone miserable. Jake, then 8, became the unwitting pawn in their psychological game. "Why can't you be sweet like your brother?" Mom would ask when I questioned why I had to turn over most of my paycheck to them. "He appreciates what we do for this family." Then came the opportunity that should have changed everything. Mrs. Winters, my art teacher, entered my portfolio in a statewide competition without telling me. When she called me into her classroom after school one day, her face was radiant. "Camden, you won the Harrington Scholarship. Full tuition to their summer intensive program, and if you impress them there, a fast track to their undergraduate program after high school." For one glorious moment, I allowed myself to feel pure, unadulterated hope. A prestigious art school, recognition of my talent, a future that existed outside of Meadowbrook. "There's just one thing," Mrs. Winters continued, her expression turning cautious. "You're a minor. Your parents need to sign the permission forms." That night, I approached my parents with the scholarship information, my hands trembling with nervous excitement. I'd even prepared counter-arguments for their potential objections. The program included housing and meals. I could work remotely for Martha on weekends. I'd still contribute to household expenses. Dad didn't even look at the forms. "Art school? Are you out of your mind? We can barely keep the lights on, and you want to waste time drawing pictures." "It's a full scholarship," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "It wouldn't cost you anything." Mom's laugh was harsh. "Wouldn't cost us anything except the money you bring in from the store. Do you think we can afford to lose that right now? How selfish can you be?" "Camden? But this is my future," I said, desperation creeping in. "This is my one chance to make something of myself." "Your future?" Dad stood up so suddenly, his chair toppled backward. "What about this family's future? What about Jake's future? Always me. 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 Me with you." The argument escalated from there. Every grievance, every perceived failure, every reason I was a disappointment, they hurled them all at me with vicious precision. And then Dad said the words that would change everything. "Ever since you were born, you've been nothing but bad luck. A curse on this family. You know what happened at the plant last year? The accident that cost me my job? I was distracted that day because of your school calling about your attitude problem. That accident cost 3 men their jobs, and Bill Harris lost 2 fingers. All because you're a curse, Camden. A goddamn curse." Something snapped inside me. 16 years of swallowing my pain, of making myself smaller, of accepting blame for things beyond my control. It all came rushing to the surface. "That's insane," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You lost your job because you were drinking on your lunch break. Everyone in town knows it. You're looking for someone to blame because you can't face what you've become." The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. My head snapped sideways, my cheek burning from the impact of my father's hand. In the ringing silence that followed, I saw Jake standing in the hallway, his eyes wide with terror. "Get out of my sight," Dad hissed. "I don't want to look at you." I retreated to my room, applied a cold washcloth to my face, and made a decision. Tomorrow, I would find a way to get those forms signed, forge their signatures if necessary, and then find a way to leave this house for good. But I never got the chance. The next day at school, I received a note to go to the principal's office. Mrs. Winters was there, her face grave. "Camden, did you know about this?" She handed me an email from her contact at the Harrington School. My parents had called that morning to decline the scholarship on my behalf, claiming we were moving out of state for a family emergency. I walked through the rest of the school day in a fog, unable to process this final betrayal. When the final bell rang, I took my time walking home, trying to formulate what I would say, how I would confront them. But when I reached our street, I knew something was wrong. Our house looked different somehow. As I got closer, I realized what it was. My bedroom curtains were gone. I ran the last 100 feet to our front door. My key didn't work. The locks had been changed. Sitting on the porch was my school backpack, stuffed to bursting, and a brown paper bag. Inside the bag was $100 in fives and ones, and a note in my mother's handwriting, "You're not our daughter anymore. Don't come back." I banged on the door until my fists hurt. I screamed until I was hoarse. The neighbor's curtains twitched, but no one came out. Finally, as dusk fell, I sank down on the porch steps, the reality of my situation sinking in. I was 16 years old, and I had just been erased from my own family. The first night, I slept in the park, huddled under the playground equipment as a light rain fell. By morning, I was soaked, shivering, and facing the horrifying question, what now? I couldn't miss school, not when it was my only place of safety. I snuck into the girls' locker room early, used the shower, and changed into the spare clothes from my backpack. In the mirror, a pale, hollow-eyed version of myself stared back. This couldn't be my life. For 3 weeks, I lived like a ghost. I slept wherever I could find shelter. One night in the school's theater backstage, another in my friend Ashley's car, after convincing her I'd had a fight with my parents and needed space. I rationed the $100 carefully, buying only what I absolutely needed to maintain the appearance of normalcy. I kept going to my job at the grocery store, offering to take extra shifts that no one wanted. The charade might have continued longer if Mrs. Peterson, my English teacher, hadn't noticed me wearing the same 3 outfits in rotation, or how I always volunteered to stay late in the library. How I never mentioned home or parents anymore. "Camden, can I see you after class?" she asked one day, her kind eyes concerned behind her reading glasses. When everyone else had filed out, she closed the classroom door. "Are you living somewhere safe right now?" I opened my mouth to lie, but to my horror, burst into tears instead. 21 days of fear and exhaustion poured out of me as Mrs. Peterson listened, her expression growing more troubled by the minute. "You'll stay with me," she said when I finished, in a tone that brooked no argument. "I have a spare room. We'll figure out the rest." That night, I slept in a real bed for the first time in weeks, clean sheets and the knowledge that I was, at least temporarily, safe. Mrs. Peterson helped me navigate the bureaucratic nightmare of my situation. We went to my parents' house together, but they refused to open the door. "We'll call the police if you don't leave," my mother's voice called through the door. "She's a runaway. We filed a report." It was a lie, but a calculated one. As a minor without legal emancipation, I existed in a precarious gray area. Mrs. Peterson consulted a lawyer friend who advised that without clear evidence of abuse, and with my parents' claim of my voluntary departure, my options were limited. "You could enter the foster system," Mrs. Peterson said gently, "or you could stay with me unofficially until you graduate. It's not strictly by the book, but—" "I'll stay with you," I said immediately, the thought of foster care and potentially being moved away from my job and school too much to bear. So began my new life. Mrs. Peterson became the parent I'd never truly had, supportive, kind, interested in my thoughts and dreams. She helped me open a bank account where my parents couldn't access my money. She encouraged me to continue pursuing art, setting up a small studio space in the corner of my bedroom. Through her, I met her nephew Ethan, a college student home on break, who became my first real friend in years. He didn't pity me. Instead, he treated my situation matter-of-factly and made me laugh for the first time in months. Meanwhile, I tried repeatedly to connect with Jake, leaving notes with his friends, trying to catch him after school. Finally, one day he met me at the playground, looking over his shoulder nervously the entire time. "They told everyone you ran away," he said, his 8-year-old face serious. "That you stole money and said you hated us." "That's not true, Jake," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. They locked me out. He looked confused, torn between believing his sister and the parents who controlled his world. "I'm not supposed to talk to you. Dad says your name is a bad word now." Before he ran off, he pressed something into my hand, a crayon drawing of a stick figure with yellow hair like mine. "I miss you," he whispered, then disappeared down the street. At school, I threw myself into academics and art with renewed purpose. Mrs. Winters, my art teacher, introduced me to a local gallery owner who offered to display some of my work. To my shock, 2 pieces sold in the first week. "You have a unique perspective," the gallery owner said. "Pain tempered with hope. People respond to that authenticity." For the first time, I began to see a future for myself. I applied to colleges with strong art programs, writing essays that carefully avoided mentioning my family situation. Mrs. Peterson helped me complete financial aid applications, listing me as independent due to irreconcilable family circumstances. Then, just as things were looking up, the universe threw me another curveball. I'd been dating Ryan, a senior from the neighboring high school, for about 2 months. What I'd thought was the flu persisted for weeks, until Mrs. Peterson gently suggested a different test. Positive, pregnant at 17. When I told Ryan, his response was immediate and devastating. "It's not mine," he said, though we both knew that was a lie. "I'm going to state in the fall. I can't deal with this." Just like that, he was gone, another person walking away when things got difficult. That night, I sat on my bed in Mrs. Peterson's house, staring at the plastic test strip, feeling my carefully constructed plans crumbling around me. The colleges I'd applied to, the scholarship I'd been hoping for, all of it suddenly seemed impossible with a baby in the picture. "I'll support whatever decision you make," Mrs. Peterson said, sitting beside me. "You have options, Camden." I thought about my parents, how they'd thrown away 16 years of raising me without a second thought. I thought about Ryan walking away from responsibility. I placed a hand on my still flat stomach and made a silent promise. I would never be like them. "I'm keeping the baby," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "But I don't know how I'm going to do this." Mrs. Peterson squeezed my hand. "One day at a time. And you won't be doing it alone." I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be, or how this unexpected twist would eventually lead to the greatest joy in my life, and ultimately, to the strength I needed to face my parents again. 21 years later, the scholarship letters arrived with cruel timing. 3 acceptance packages, 2 with partial financial aid, 1 with a full ride to a prestigious art program in Philadelphia. I spread them across the kitchen table in Mrs. Peterson's house, my hands trembling as I reread the congratulatory language. "These are amazing opportunities, Camden," Mrs. Peterson said, her eyes warm with pride. "You've earned every one, and they're all impossible now," I replied, resting a hand on my slightly rounded belly. 5 months along, and increasingly difficult to hide. The full-ride scholarship was the first to go. When I called to explain my situation, the administrator's voice turned frosty. "Our dormitory facilities don't accommodate infants, and our insurance policy explicitly prohibits children in the studio spaces. I'm sorry, but we'll need to offer this opportunity to another candidate." Just like that, my dream school vanished. The other programs were similarly unhelpful. Without housing that could accommodate a baby, and with class schedules incompatible with childcare needs, they were non-starters. "We need a different plan," Mrs. Peterson said one evening, setting a cup of herbal tea in front of me. "The community college has an early childhood education center on campus. Their art program isn't as prestigious, but it's a start." I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. A part of me wanted to rage against the unfairness of it all. How my parents' abandonment had set in motion this cascade of diminished opportunities. But the baby kicked, a gentle flutter reminding me that self-pity wouldn't change our reality. The next few months passed in a blur of preparations. I continued working at the grocery store until my 8th month, when standing for long periods became too difficult. I took online certification courses in graphic design, something I could potentially do from home while caring for a baby. Mrs. Peterson converted half of her sewing room into a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow. "Yellow is the color of hope," she said as we assembled a second-hand crib. And this little one is bringing plenty of that. On a sweltering August day, after 26 hours of labor, my daughter Sarah entered the world. 7 pounds, 4 ounces of perfect, squalling determination. When the nurse placed her in my arms, her tiny fingers grasping my thumb with surprising strength, I understood for the first time what unconditional love truly meant. "Hello, Sarah," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm your mom, and I promise I will never, ever leave you." Mrs. Peterson, who had stayed by my side throughout the ordeal, wiped her own tears. "She's beautiful, Camden. Absolutely beautiful." The reality of motherhood hit hard in those first weeks. Sleep deprivation turned my brain to fog. Breastfeeding was painful and frustrating until we both got the hang of it. The tiny apartment I'd managed to rent with my savings, wanting to give Mrs. Peterson back her space, seemed to shrink with the addition of baby equipment. By the time Sarah was 2 months old, I was working 3 jobs. Remote data entry during her naps. Weekend shifts at the grocery store. While Mrs. Peterson watched Sarah, and selling digital illustrations online, whenever I could find the energy to draw. Community college classes would start when Sarah turned 6 months old, adding another layer of complexity to our precariously balanced life. "You can't keep going like this," Mrs. Peterson said one Sunday evening, watching me attempt to rock Sarah with one arm while typing with the other. "You'll burn out." "What choice do I have?" I asked, my voice cracking with exhaustion. This is our life now. The next morning, desperate for caffeine and adult conversation, I took Sarah to a small cafe near our apartment. As I struggled to maneuver the stroller through the door while balancing my diaper bag, a woman in an impeccably tailored suit stepped forward to help. "Thank you," I said, collapsing into a chair. Sarah miraculously still asleep. "My pleasure," the woman replied, her voice carrying a slight French accent. "May I join you?" "I'm waiting for a colleague who's running late." Her name was Gabrielle Laurent, an art collector and gallery owner from New York who was in town meeting with local artists. As we talked, Sarah woke up fussing. I apologized, reaching for my bag to prepare a bottle, but Gabrielle waved away my concerns. "May I?" she asked, holding out her arms. To my surprise, Sarah settled immediately against her shoulder, staring up at her with curious eyes. "I have 6 nieces and nephews. Babies and I understand each other." When Gabrielle's colleague texted to cancel, our conversation continued. She asked thoughtful questions about my background and education, nodding without judgment when I carefully explained I was a single mother attending community college. When I mentioned my art, she asked to see my portfolio. Hesitantly, I pulled out my tablet, showing her the digital illustrations I'd been selling online and sketches I'd managed to complete during Sarah's rare longer naps. "These have raw emotion," Gabrielle said, swiping through the images with growing interest. "Untrained, perhaps, but authentic. You have a genuine voice." Before she left, Gabrielle handed me her business card. "I need a personal assistant in my gallery 3 days a week. The hours would be flexible, the pay is decent, and you can bring your daughter when needed. I have a small office that would make a suitable nursery space." I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "You don't know me." "I know talent and determination when I see it," she replied with a small smile. "Call me tomorrow if you're interested." Working for Gabrielle changed everything. Not only was the salary enough that I could drop my other jobs, but the exposure to the art world was an education beyond anything community college could offer. I learned about valuation, provenance, the business side of creativity that my formal education had never addressed. Sarah thrived in the gallery environment, charming clients and absorbing the colors and textures around her. By her first birthday, she was crawling determinedly across the polished hardwood floors, reaching for the art books Gabrielle placed on the lowest shelves specifically for her. "She has your eye," Gabrielle observed one afternoon, watching Sarah pat a particularly vibrant abstract painting. "The way she's drawn to color and form. That's innate." Over the next few years, a pattern emerged. I attended classes in the mornings, worked at the gallery in the afternoons, and studied at night after Sarah was asleep. Gabrielle became more than an employer. She was a mentor, a friend, and the supportive maternal figure I'd never had growing up. When Sarah was 3, Gabrielle revealed something that explained her instant connection with us. "I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer 5 years ago," she said matter-of-factly as we were closing the gallery one evening. "It's returned. Stage 4 this time. The doctors give me 2 years, perhaps 3 with aggressive treatment." I sat down hard, the inventory clipboard clutched in my suddenly cold hands. "Gabrielle, I'm so sorry. Is there anything?" "Nothing to be done except live well with the time I have left," she interrupted, her expression serene. "But there are practical matters to consider. I have no children, no family left except distant cousins in France who have never shown interest in the gallery or my collection." Over the following months, as Gabrielle underwent treatments that left her frail but still remarkably determined, she began teaching me more intensively about art investment, authentication, and gallery management. What I'd thought was mentorship revealed itself as something more purposeful. She was preparing me for something, though I didn't yet understand what. "The digital revolution will transform the art world," she told me one day, watching me experiment with a new illustration program on the gallery's computer. "Most of my colleagues are too set in their ways to see it coming, but you straddle both worlds. There's opportunity there." Inspired by her words, I began developing a concept for a digital art platform that would connect emerging artists directly with collectors, bypassing the traditional gallery system while still providing authentication and provenance tracking. When I shared the idea with Gabrielle, her eyes lit up with their old fire. "This is exactly what I've been waiting for," she said, pulling out her personal laptop. "I want to show you something." On the screen was a detailed investment portfolio: stocks, bonds, real estate holdings, and an extensive art collection. At the bottom of the document was my name, listed as a 40% beneficiary. "Gabrielle?" "No," I protested, shocked by what I was seeing. "This is too much." "Your family. You and Sarah are my family," she replied firmly. "The cousins will receive their share, but this is my investment in your future, and in your vision for this platform. Promise me you'll build it." 5 years after our first meeting in that cafe, Gabrielle passed away peacefully in her sleep. At the reading of her will, her lawyer handed me a letter, along with the documentation of my inheritance. Camden. It read in her elegant handwriting, "You came into my life when I most needed hope. Your strength in the face of abandonment, your determination to create a better life for Sarah, your refusal to be defined by those who rejected you. These qualities are rarer and more valuable than any painting in my collection. Build your platform, change the art world, and remember that family is not defined by blood, but by love. Always, Gabrielle." With Sarah now 6 years old and starting first grade, I stood at another crossroads. The inheritance gave me the financial freedom to pursue my digital platform full-time, but it also came with the weight of Gabrielle's expectations and my own fears of failure. "What do you think, sweet pea?" I asked Sarah one night, after explaining in simple terms that Mommy might be starting her own business. She considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old can muster. "I think Aunt Gabby would be happy." "And I like it when you're happy, Mommy," from the mouths of babes. The next day, I began laying the groundwork for what would eventually become Artverse, the platform that would, within a decade, revolutionize how digital art was bought, sold, and authenticated across the global market. As Sarah grew and the business expanded, I occasionally thought about my parents and Jake. What did they think had happened to me? Did they ever regret their decision? Once, on a business trip back to Pennsylvania, I drove past our old house, now painted a different color with a swing set in the yard, clear evidence of a new family living there. I felt nothing but a distant sadness, like looking at a photograph of strangers. What I didn't know then was that they were watching me, and that one day they would re-enter my life in a way I could never have anticipated. By the time Sarah turned 14, Artverse had grown beyond my wildest expectations. What had started as a modest platform connecting digital artists with buyers had evolved into a multi-million-dollar enterprise that pioneered blockchain authentication for digital art ownership long before it became mainstream. We had offices in New York, Los Angeles, and London, with a team of 60 passionate employees who shared my vision of democratizing art access, while ensuring creators were fairly compensated. Sarah and I had moved from our small apartment to a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn, then to a spacious home in Westchester County, as the business continued to thrive. I made sure our success never disconnected us from reality. Sarah attended public school, had chores, and a reasonable allowance, and understood the value of hard work and compassion. Mom, Zoe invited me to go skiing with her family during winter break. Sarah announced one evening as we were preparing dinner together. A sacred ritual we maintained, despite my increasingly demanding schedule. Can I go? Of course, I replied, chopping vegetables for our stir-fry. We'll need to get you some proper gear, though. Sarah hesitated, a familiar crease appearing between her eyebrows. Zoe's grandparents are coming too. It made me think, do I have grandparents? You never talk about your parents. The knife stilled in my hand. I'd always been honest with Sarah about our family situation, explaining in age-appropriate ways that my parents and I had a falling out before she was born. But I'd kept the harsher details vague, not wanting to burden her with my pain. Yes, you do have grandparents, I said carefully, and an uncle named Jake, but they haven't been part of our lives. Why not? Did you have a really bad fight? I set down the knife and turned to face my daughter, nearly eye to eye with me now at 14. They made a choice, when I was 16, to end our relationship. It wasn't about a fight. It was about them not wanting to be parents to me anymore. Sarah's eyes widened. They just stopped being your parents? Can people do that? They shouldn't, I said, feeling the old wound throb dully. But yes, they did. And then when I found out I was pregnant with you, I promised myself I would never do that to you, no matter what. She was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. Then she wrapped her arms around me in a fierce hug. I'm sorry they were stupid, their loss. I hugged her back, marveling at the compassionate young woman she was becoming. Absolutely their loss. Now, tell me more about this ski trip. Later that week, a business opportunity took me back to Pennsylvania. After my meetings, on impulse, I decided to look up my old friend Ashley. We'd fallen out of touch after high school, but social media made it easy to reconnect. Over coffee at the same cafe where I'd once met Gabrielle, Ashley filled me in on town gossip, including an unexpected update. I ran into your brother Jake at the supermarket last month, she said. He's working as an accountant at the new tech firm outside town. Married with twin boys. My heart contracted. Jake would be 29 now, no longer the little boy who had slipped me crayon drawings. Did he mention me? Ashley's expression turned uncomfortable. Not exactly. But I mentioned I'd seen your name in a business magazine. Your parents were with him, and your mom got really weird about it. Said something like, she abandoned this family when she was 16. Ran off with some boy. They told people I ran away? The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. That's always been their story, Ashley confirmed. That you stole money, left in the night. Most people who knew you didn't believe it, but you know how small towns are. The story stuck. After our meeting, I sat in my rental car, hands gripping the steering wheel as anger bubbled up inside me. Not only had they thrown me away, but they'd spent years slandering me, painting themselves as the victims. It was so perfectly in character that I wanted to laugh. Except there was nothing funny about it. On impulse, I found Jake's office address online and drove there, with no clear plan of what I'd say if I actually saw him. I parked across the street, watching the entrance of the modern glass building. At 5:30, a steady stream of employees began exiting. And then I saw him, taller, broader in the shoulders. But unmistakably, Jake, his walk still with that slight bounce, I remembered. Before I could decide whether to approach him, a woman joined him, linking her arm through his. Behind them, an older couple emerged from the building. Even from a distance, I recognized my parents instantly. My father's distinctive stoop, my mother's habit of gesturing with her right hand as she spoke. They looked older, of course. My father's hair now completely gray, my mother's figure fuller. But it was them, laughing with Jake and his wife. The picture of a happy family. I sank lower in my seat, a sudden cold fear gripping me. What had I expected? A tearful reunion? An apology? The four of them walked to the parking lot, got into separate cars, and drove away, completely unaware that the daughter they had erased was watching from shadows. That night in my hotel room, I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and, against my better judgment, searched my father's name. The results were sparse, but one link caught my eye, a Facebook page belonging to my mother. Though her privacy settings were fairly strict, some photos were public, including albums labeled Jake's Wedding and Grandparents' Day with the twins. My finger hovered over the trackpad, knowing I was about to cause myself pain, but unable to resist. The photos showed my parents beaming with Jake and his bride, holding newborn babies, celebrating holidays in the house where I'd grown up, a complete family narrative from which I had been thoroughly excised. In one photo, my mother had commented, "So blessed to be a grandma to these beautiful boys. Family is everything." The hypocrisy was so staggering I actually gasped aloud. Out of morbid curiosity, I typed my own name into the search bar of her page. No results. It was as if I had never existed. I closed the laptop and lay back on the hotel bed, tears streaming silently down my face. Not tears of sadness, exactly, but of final confirmation. The fantasy I'd occasionally entertained, that they might have regretted their actions, that they might have tried to find me, dissolved completely. They had rewritten history, cast me as the villain, and moved on without a backward glance. The next morning, I received an unexpected call from my assistant. "Camden, sorry to bother you on your trip, but there's something odd happening with our social media accounts. We've been getting messages asking if you're the same Camden Parker who grew up in Meadowbrook. They're coming from several accounts that seem to have been created recently." A chill ran down my spine. "Forward me the messages, please." They were benign on the surface. "Are you the Camden from Meadowbrook High? Didn't you used to work at Simmons Grocery?" But the timing was too coincidental. Someone from my hometown, perhaps even my family, had discovered who I was now. Over the next few months, I noticed more signs of surveillance. Business articles about Artverse would receive comments from anonymous accounts, asking personal questions about my background. A profile view notification on my professional networking page from someone in Meadowbrook. An email to the company's general address, asking for Camden Parker from Pennsylvania. I tightened my privacy settings and instructed my team to be vigilant about information requests. The thought of my parents secretly tracking my success while maintaining their narrative of abandonment filled me with a cold fury I hadn't felt in years. "Is everything okay, Mom?" Sarah asked one evening, finding me staring at my computer screen where I discovered yet another social media account clearly created to monitor my activities. I closed the laptop and smiled at her. "Just some business complications. Nothing for you to worry about." But as Sarah entered her teen years, asking more questions about her family history, I knew I couldn't shield her forever from the truth. How do you explain to a child that her grandparents discarded her mother like unwanted furniture? That they've been secretly watching our success while spreading lies? "I want you to meet your Uncle Jake someday," I told Sarah on her 15th birthday. "When the time is right." "But my parents." "That's more complicated." "Because they hurt you," she said with the directness of youth. "Yes. And because some people don't change, sweet pea. Some wounds don't heal with time." I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be, or that in just a few short years, I would come face to face with the authors of those wounds, standing on my doorstep with hands outstretched, not in apology, but in expectation. The morning of my 37th birthday dawned crisp and clear, the autumn leaves on our property creating a tapestry of red and gold. Sarah, now 17 and preparing college applications, had arranged a small celebration, breakfast in bed, handmade cards from her and a few close friends, and tickets to a Broadway show that evening. "You're spoiling me," I said, hugging her tightly. "I'm supposed to be the one taking care of you." "You deserve to be spoiled," she replied with a grin. "Especially since I'm abandoning you all day to finish my Northwestern application. Their early decision deadline is next week." As Sarah disappeared into her room with her laptop, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From a terrified pregnant teenager to the CEO of a company valued at over $50 million, from a child abandoned by her parents to a mother with an incredible daughter about to start her own adult life. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. My therapist, yes, I'd finally started therapy 5 years ago, would be proud of how far I'd come in processing my childhood trauma. The nightmares about being locked out had diminished. The compulsive need to prove my worth through achievement had softened into a healthier ambition. I'd even begun dating seriously for the first time since Ryan, a kind architect named David, who understood my caution about relationships. "You've built a beautiful life, Camden," David had said just last week over dinner. "I'm honored to be part of it." The doorbell rang, interrupting my reverie. I wasn't expecting any deliveries, and friends knew I had plans with Sarah later. Puzzled, I made my way to the front door of our comfortable home, not ostentatious by any means, but undeniably the residence of someone successful. Through the decorative glass panels flanking the door, I could make out two figures, an older man and woman, probably neighbors or maybe representatives from Sarah's school, I thought as I pulled the door open with a welcoming smile. The smile froze on my face. Standing on my porch, 21 years after throwing me out with nothing but a backpack, were my parents. They had aged, of course. My father's once dark hair was now silver, his tall frame slightly stooped. My mother's face bore deeper lines, her hair dyed an unnatural shade of blonde. But their eyes, his dark brown, hers hazel like mine, were unmistakable. For a moment, none of us spoke, the shock of the moment suspending time itself. "Camden," my mother finally said, her voice exactly as I remembered it. "You look well." The understatement was almost laughable. I looked more than well. I was healthy, successful, composed in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, standing in the doorway of my beautiful home. "What are you doing here?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "How did you find me?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "We've known about your situation for some time. Your company's been in the business news. Jake recognized you in a photo." The way he said situation, as if my success were some kind of embarrassing condition, sent a flash of anger through me. But beneath the anger was something colder, more calculating. They hadn't tracked me down after all these years for a heartwarming reunion. There was purpose in their unexpected appearance. "What do you want?" I asked directly. My mother's smile tightened. "Can't parents want to reconnect with their daughter? We've missed so much of your life." "By choice?" I reminded her. "Your choice, specifically." "Water under the bridge," my father interjected with forced joviality. "Families have disagreements. The important thing is that we're here now. May we come in? It's chilly out here." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside to let them enter. Not out of any desire for reconciliation, but from pure curiosity. What possible scenario were they imagining would play out here? They followed me to the living room, their eyes darting around, taking in the tasteful furnishings, the original artwork on the walls, the obvious signs of financial comfort. My mother clutched her imitation designer purse a little tighter. My father's expression shifted between assessment and something that might have been pride if he'd earned any right to it. "Beautiful home," my mother commented, settling onto the edge of the sofa. "You've done very well for yourself." "No thanks to you," I replied calmly, remaining standing. "Again, what brings you here after 21 years of silence?" "No calls, no birthday cards for me or your granddaughter, not even a message through Jake. Now suddenly you're on my doorstep?" They exchanged a glance, some unspoken communication passing between them. My father cleared his throat. "Camden, family is the most important thing in life. We've come to realize that over the years. The past is the past, but we're still your parents." "Are you?" I asked, genuine curiosity in my voice. "What exactly does that word mean to you? Because from where I'm standing, you forfeited that title when you changed the locks and left me homeless at 16. My mother's expression hardened slightly. "You were always so dramatic. We left you money. And you were hardly homeless. We heard all about how you moved in with that teacher. Quite the setup you arranged for yourself." The casual rewriting of history, the implication that I'd somehow engineered my own abandonment for personal gain, it was so breathtakingly cruel that I almost admired the audacity. "Mom, is everything okay?" Sarah's voice came from the hallway before she appeared in the doorway. Tall and confident with my eyes and jawline but her own distinctive presence. My parents' reactions were immediate and revealing. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes, the picture of the emotional grandmother. My father stood, extending his hand to Sarah with a warm smile that never reached his eyes. "You must be Sarah. We're your grandparents." I'm Tom, and this is Diane. Sarah looked at me questioningly, picking up on the tension in the room. Mom? Yes, I confirmed, moving to stand beside her protectively. These are my parents. They were just explaining why they've decided to appear in our lives after 17 years of your existence. We didn't know how to reach you, my mother said quickly, addressing Sarah directly now. Your mother left town suddenly when she was young. We've been trying to find you both for years. The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that I wondered how many times they'd rehearsed it. Sarah, intelligent and perceptive, looked between us with clear skepticism. That's interesting, she said carefully. Because Mom's been running a pretty public company for over a decade now. Not exactly hiding. My father waved this away. Miscommunications happen in families. The important thing is that we're here now. We want to be part of your lives. Why? The question came from Sarah, direct and uncompromising. Why now, specifically? Another glance between my parents, another silent communication. Then my father sighed heavily, his shoulders slumping in a practiced display of vulnerability. I've been diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The prognosis isn't good. 6 months, maybe a year, with aggressive treatment. Treatment that our insurance won't fully cover. And there it was, the real purpose of their visit, laid bare with surprising speed. They hadn't come for reconciliation or to meet their granddaughter. They'd come for money. I'm sorry to hear about your health issues, I said, meaning it despite everything. I wouldn't wish cancer on anyone, not even him. That must be very difficult. It's been a nightmare, my mother jumped in, reaching for my father's hand in a display of solidarity. The medical bills are overwhelming. We've already remortgaged the house, but the specialized treatment Tom needs is in Baltimore, and the travel costs alone. She trailed off, the implication clear. They were here to ask their successful daughter, the one they'd thrown away, like garbage, for financial assistance. The sheer audacity of it left me momentarily speechless. Sarah, less encumbered by history, spoke into the silence. Have you talked to Uncle Jake about this? I'd like to meet him someday. Jake helps where he can, my father said quickly, but with the twins and his wife only working part-time, there's only so much they can do. I found my voice again. How much are you looking for, exactly? My mother straightened, sensing an opening. The treatment course is $85,000. We've managed to scrape together about 20 from our savings and Jake's contribution. If you could help with even half of what's remaining, $30,000. The amount they were angling for was substantial but not impossible for me. A fact they clearly knew from researching my company's success. What struck me wasn't the amount, but the entitled way they were asking for it. As if repayment of a debt, rather than an extraordinary request from people who had abused and abandoned me. I need to think about this, I said, rising from my seat. This is a lot to process after 2 decades of no contact. Of course, my father said, though disappointment flashed across his face. He'd clearly expected immediate capitulation. We're staying at the Hampton Inn in town for a few days. Here's my cell number. He placed a business card on the coffee table. As I walked them to the door, my mother turned to Sarah. We'd love to get to know you better, sweetheart. Perhaps we could have lunch tomorrow? We could tell you all about your mother when she was your age. Before Sarah could respond, I intervened smoothly. We'll be in touch about that. Sarah has college applications due soon, so her schedule is quite tight. Once they were gone, Sarah turned to me, her expression a mix of confusion and concern. Mom, what just happened? I led her back to the living room and told her everything. The complete, unvarnished truth about my parents, the abandonment, the lies they'd told about me running away, and their decades of silence while secretly monitoring my success. So they only showed up because they need money? Sarah's voice cracked with indignation. That's horrible. It is, I agreed, but not surprising, knowing them. What complicates things is that your grandfather really might be sick. I'll need to verify that before making any decisions. Sarah sat beside me on the couch, taking my hand. What are you going to do? I squeezed her hand, grateful beyond words for this remarkable person I'd raised. I honestly don't know yet. Part of me wants to tell them exactly where they can go. Another part recognizes that despite everything, they're still technically family. No, Sarah said with unexpected firmness. Family doesn't do what they did to you. Family doesn't lie and manipulate and only show up when they need something. Mrs. Peterson was family. Gabrielle was family. I'm family. They're just biology. As she spoke, my phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. Camden, it's Jake. Heard Mom and Dad visited you today. We need to talk. Can we meet tomorrow? I showed the message to Sarah, whose eyes widened. Are you going to meet him? Yes, I decided. After all these years, I think it's time I heard what my brother has to say. What I didn't know then was that the meeting with Jake would reveal a final twist in the family saga. One that would force me to make a decision not just about money, but about the very nature of forgiveness and the definition of family itself. The next morning, I met Jake at a quiet coffee shop halfway between our homes. When he walked in, the years fell away for a moment. The same cowlick in his hair that never quite stayed down, the same slight hesitation before committing to a direction. But he was a man now, not the little boy I remembered, with responsibility etched into the lines around his eyes. Camden, he said, standing awkwardly beside the table I'd chosen. You look really good. So do you, I replied, gesturing for him to sit. Thanks for reaching out. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, 21 years of separation creating a chasm neither of us quite knew how to bridge. Finally, Jake spoke. I need to apologize, he said, his voice low and earnest, for not standing up for you back then, for not finding a way to stay in touch. I was a kid, but as I got older, I should have tried harder. His apology was unexpected, and I felt something tighten my chest, loosen slightly. You were 8, Jake. What happened wasn't your fault. Maybe not then, but what about the last 15 years? I knew about your company, Camden. I found articles about you online maybe 6 years ago. I should have reached out. I studied him, seeing the genuine regret in his expression. Why didn't you? He sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. At first, it was fear of Mom and Dad's reaction. They've spent years maintaining this narrative that you abandoned the family. Then it was shame. The longer I waited, the harder it became. And now? Now they're pulling the same manipulative tactics on me that they always used on you. And I finally see it clearly. Jake leaned forward, lowering his voice. Dad doesn't have stage 3 pancreatic cancer, Camden. He has stage 1 pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer, a far less aggressive form with a significantly better prognosis. I sat back, processing this revelation. They lied about the severity to make the situation seem more desperate. Exactly. And while he does need treatment, their insurance covers 60% of the costs. The $20,000 they claimed, I contributed? I gave them $5,000, and that was stretching my budget to the breaking point with the twins' preschool costs. So they're trying to get money from me under false pretenses, I said. A cold clarity settling over me. I can't say I'm surprised. Jake pulled out his phone, opening his gallery app. There's more. Look at these. He showed me photos of my parents' house, recently renovated with a new deck and hot tub. Their new SUV parked in the driveway. My mother's social media posts about their cruise to Alaska just 3 months ago. They're not destitute, Camden. Dad's pension from the factory covers their basic expenses, and Mom's been working as an office manager for 10 years now. They're not rich, but they're far from the desperate picture they painted for you. Why would they go to such extremes? I asked, though I already knew the answer. They must have known I'd eventually discover the truth. Jake's expression darkened. Because they found out about your net worth from some business magazine article. Mom's been obsessed with it ever since, talking about how our daughter is a millionaire while we're struggling with medical bills. As if you owe them something after what they did. And you? What do you think I owe them? He met my gaze directly. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm here to warn you, not to ask for anything. They've been telling the extended family that you agreed to pay for everything, setting up a situation where you'll look bad when you don't. Classic manipulation. The pieces clicked into place. The urgency of their visit, the attempt to establish immediate contact with Sarah, the sob story designed to trigger guilt and obligation. It was a calculated strategy from people who viewed relationships solely through the lens of transaction. "Thank you for telling me this," I said sincerely. "It can't be easy to speak against your parents. They're my parents, but what they did to you was unforgivable." Jake hesitated, then added, "I'd like a chance to be your brother again, if that's something you'd want, and to meet my niece. No pressure, no expectations. Just family, in whatever way feels right to you." Back at home, I shared everything I'd learned with Sarah, who listened with growing indignation. "So now what? Are you going to confront them?" "I think I need to," I said, reaching a decision. "Not for closure. I've made my peace with the past. But to make it clear that they can't manipulate their way back into our lives. I want to be there," Sarah insisted. "They need to see that we're a team." The next day, I called my parents and invited them to the house, setting the stage for the confrontation on my terms. They arrived promptly, my father wearing a somber expression that I now recognized as entirely performative. "We've been praying about this situation," my mother began as they settled onto the sofa. "Family is so important in times of crisis." "I agree," I replied calmly. "Family is important, which is why I'm having trouble reconciling your current claims with your past actions and present circumstances." My father shifted uncomfortably. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I know about your actual diagnosis, Dad. Stage 1 pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer. Not stage 3. Pancreatic cancer. A significant difference in both treatment approach and prognosis." Their expressions flickered. Surprise, then calculation. My mother recovered first. "The doctors have gone back and forth on the staging. The important thing is that your father needs treatment that your insurance covers 60% of," I interrupted. "Not the barely anything you claimed yesterday. I also know about the recent house renovations, the Alaskan cruise, the new SUV." My father's face darkened. "You've been investigating us? Having us followed?" "I spoke to Jake," I said simply. "Jake had no right," my mother snapped, her friendly facade crumbling. "This is a private family matter." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "And as you pointed out yesterday, I am family, when it's convenient for you. When there's something to gain." The front door opened, and Sarah entered, home from her study session at the library earlier than expected. She took in the tableau, my parents on the sofa, me standing by the fireplace, and moved to stand beside me. "You must be Sarah," my father said, his tone shifting to grandfatherly warmth. "We were just discussing family matters with your mother." "I know exactly what you were discussing," Sarah replied coolly. "And I know what you did to my mom when she was younger than I am now." My mother's expression hardened. "You don't know the whole story. Your mother was a difficult teenager. Rebellious. Ungrateful. We did the best we could, with limited resources." "Really?" I retrieved a folder from the desk drawer and spread its contents on the coffee table. "These are the documents I've kept all these years. The note you left with my backpack. The police report I filed after you changed the locks, which the officers decided not to pursue because I had a place to stay with Mrs. Peterson. The certified letters I sent attempting to retrieve my birth certificate and social security card, which you never answered." My father waved these away impatiently. "Ancient history. Everyone makes mistakes. We're here now, trying to rebuild bridges, and you're throwing the past in our faces." "The past is relevant when the patterns haven't changed," I countered. "You're not here to rebuild bridges. You're here because you think I'm an ATM with familial obligation." "How dare you," my mother hissed, her true nature emerging as the pretense fell away. "After everything we sacrificed to raise you." "Sacrificed?" The word hung in the air. "You abandoned me at 16 with $100 and a backpack. You missed my high school graduation, my college graduation, the birth of your granddaughter, every milestone of my adult life. You told people I ran away when you locked me out. You've been tracking my success for years without once reaching out until you needed something. What exactly did you sacrifice?" My father stood abruptly. "We don't have to listen to this ingratitude. You've clearly done well for yourself. with your fancy house and your millions? Would it kill you to help your family in a time of need, after everything we gave you? What did you give me? I asked quietly. Tell me, what lasting gift did I receive from either of you that helped me become who I am today? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Sarah moved closer to me, her presence a silent statement of solidarity. Here's what I'm willing to do, I said after the silence had stretched uncomfortably long. I'll pay for a consultation with the top specialist in Dad's type of cancer to ensure you're getting the best treatment plan. Not because I owe you anything, but because it's what a decent human being would do. Beyond that, my obligation ends. That's it? My mother's voice rose incredulously. A consultation? Your father is fighting for his life, and you offer a consultation? He's not fighting for his life, I corrected. He has a treatable form of cancer with an excellent survival rate when addressed properly. His insurance covers most of the treatment. You have savings and assets. You have options that don't involve manipulating the daughter you discarded. My father's face flushed with anger. This is how you repay your upbringing? We put a roof over your head for 16 years, the bare minimum required by law, I noted. And then not even that. You ungrateful. He cut himself off, visibly struggling for control. We'll see what the rest of the family thinks about this. Your aunts and uncles already know how successful you've become. They'll be interested to hear how you refuse to help your dying father. Sarah, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. Is that a threat? Are you actually threatening my mother right now, in her own home? My mother turned to her, a last attempt at manipulation. Sweetheart, you don't understand the complexity of adult relationships. Family obligations. Stop, Sarah said firmly. I understand perfectly. You threw my mother away when she needed you most. You lied about her for years. Now you're here with more lies, trying to guilt her into giving you money. There's nothing complex about it. It's just wrong. My parents exchanged glances, realizing their strategy had failed completely. My father grabbed his coat. This isn't over, Camden. We have legal options. You have a financial obligation to your parents under filial responsibility laws. I smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. Actually, I had my lawyer research that yesterday. In this state, those laws only apply if the parents provided financial support during the child's minority years and maintained a relationship afterward. You did neither. But please, feel free to consult your own attorney. As they moved toward the door, my mother turned back, playing her final card. Jake will be disappointed. He was so sure you'd help, given your circumstances. After all, we took him in when you abandoned him. I just got off the phone with Jake before you arrived, I replied calmly. He's coming over for dinner tonight with his wife and the twins. It seems he's had his own revelation about family dynamics. The door closed behind them with a finality that brought not sadness but relief. Sarah wrapped her arms around me in a fierce hug. You were amazing, Mom. I'm so proud of you. Later that evening, our home filled with the sound of children's laughter as Jake's 7-year-old twins explored the backyard swing set. Jake and his wife Amanda sat with Sarah and me on the patio, the autumn evening mild enough for outdoor dining. They showed up at our house this morning, Jake said, accepting the glass of wine I offered. Furious, demanding to know why I betrayed them. When I wouldn't back down, Mom said I was just like Camden, apparently the worst insult she could think of. I'll take that as a compliment, I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. How does it feel to be the family disappointment? Liberating, he admitted with a grin. I should have done this years ago. As dinner progressed, I watched Sarah with her cousins, Jake with his wife, and felt a profound sense of rightness. This was family, not the toxic obligation my parents had tried to impose, but a chosen connection built on mutual respect and genuine care. 6 months later, we launched the Camden Parker Foundation, dedicated to providing housing, education, and legal support for teens facing family rejection. The first scholarship recipient was a 16-year-old artist whose parents had kicked her out for similar rebellious behavior, getting a B on her report card, and wanting to attend art school. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if your parents had supported your art? Sarah asked me at the foundation's opening event. Now 18 and headed to Northwestern in the fall, she had grown into a thoughtful, compassionate young woman who made me proud every day. Sometimes, I admitted. But then I might not have met Mrs. Peterson or Gabrielle. I might not have developed the resilience that helped build Artverse. And most importantly, I might not have learned what kind of parent I wanted to be for you. Sarah smiled, linking her arm through mine. Their loss was definitely my gain. Over by the foundation's display wall, I watched Jake explaining the organization's mission to his twins. My brother had become a steadfast presence in our lives. The family connection I'd thought lost forever, restored in a new and healthier form. The journey from that terrified 16-year-old with a backpack to the woman I was today had been long and often painful. But standing in a room dedicated to ensuring no other teen would face that journey alone, surrounded by the family I had chosen, and who had chosen me in return, I felt a sense of completion. My parents had called me a curse and thrown me away. But in that rejection, I had found the strength to build something beautiful, a successful business, a loving family, and now a foundation that would turn pain into purpose for generations to come. The curse, it turned out, was the greatest blessing of my life. What would you do if someone who abandoned you suddenly returned when they needed something from you? Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Comment below with your thoughts, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening, and remember that true family is defined by love, not blood.